Today marks 10 years since 13-year-old Andy Lopez was shot and killed by a Sonoma County Sheriff's deputy. Lopez was killed in 2013 in Santa Rosa by Sheriff's Deputy Eric Gelhaus. He was walking down the street carrying a toy rifle that police said looked real. The DA later decided not to charge Deputy Gelhaus, calling Andy Lopez's death absolutely tragic but lawful. Gelhaus was later promoted and then retired with a pension. 5 years after the shooting, the family received a $3 million settlement with the county. But this shooting did spark protest. It triggered reforms. And in the 10 years since Andy's death, some are asking, what have we learned? Joining us now, we have Ron Rogers. He's the producer of 3 Seconds in October. Good morning to you, Ron. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So your documentary, it is compelling, sad, traumatic actually to watch. I mean, there is no part of this story and the story of Andy Lopez that isn't heartbreaking. The question, and I think this is what you talk about in your documentary that has been out for a while now, is kind of what do we take away from this outside of the heartbreak and the tragedy that is impossible to separate? What do we learn? And what do you think 10 years later the lesson is?
Well, I would have to say 10 years later, the main thing that is apparent to me is that originally the Santa Rosa Police Department had a press conference and made the claim that Andy, who was approached from behind by Deputy Gelhaus, turned to see who was yelling at him, and that when he turned, the toy gun was rising up, thereby justifying the shooting. The problem, though, is that even though the police investigation went along with that, basically, the civil case found by providing a deposition of Deputy Gelhaus, including a videotape deposition of him describing what Andy did just prior to the shooting, the toy gun was constantly pointing downward. So after 10 years, a lot of people still believe that, you're showing a picture of the gun pointing down. A lot of people still believe that the gun was rising and it was justified. But what we learned is that through getting access to the formerly secret police investigative files is that the police investigation was basically a campaign to justify the shooting, whereas the civil case provided a lot more information about what really happened.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting, Ron, when we talk about this, that since 2013, when this happened, a lot has happened, and especially when we're talking about taking a look at the system and taking a look at how things are investigated, how we view the process. I know you were a deputy district attorney for Sacramento County. You're a senior trial attorney. Do you think we have gotten better at looking at how we investigate what happens and how we view cases like this?
Well, there was a recent example here in Sonoma County where a guy was on his knees with his arms raised, unarmed, and the sheriff's department sicked a dog on him anyway. And the problem is that, there's a culture over there that continues. And it's true that an oversight committee has been formed, but there's not a whole lot of cooperation.
There is some, yeah, I mean, certainly in recent cases, we see some resistance. I think coming out of George Floyd and different civil actions, too, that we've looked at, and criminal actions and trials and police officers who have been charged. And you have said in past interviews, too, that your documentary, it is upsetting, but you say it's not anti-police. And certainly for this conversation, getting police on board for oversight committees, getting ways that we look at this so we can improve the system is important.
Well, the film is not anti-police because when incidents like this happen, it tarnishes the reputation of the vast majority of officers who are doing a good job every day. But the problem is that there's a culture of justifying the shootings, good or bad, and the oversight committee doesn't have a whole lot of power. It's all advisory, so the sheriff's office can say, as they did in the last one, you don't know what you're talking about, and ignore it.
And that was involving canines as well. I think, in terms of what you think moving forward, I think the documentary is important because it kind of takes. You did a lot of work, a lot of interviews with people to see it kind of in the big picture and in retrospect, which is important as well, to just kind of examine what we can learn from this. What do you hope moving forward happens to help make this a better system and process for everyone?
Well, I hope that people will take the time and trouble to look into these things and become educated about what actually happened. And, unfortunately, what comes out of the police departments for their playbook of justifying go beyond that. We need investigative reporters to go beyond that and find out what happens, because the civil case and the interview showed that there was a lot more that happened. So we've got to get informed, and we've got to get active and have our views known.
Okay. Ron Rogers, I appreciate you joining us on this 10-year anniversary as we take a look back, as it's so important to, I think you have to look back in order to look ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we want to let you know there's also a vigil planned at Andy's Unity Park today. That is a park built by the county in his memory. Now, I did reach out to the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office for a statement about this 10 years that has happened since the shooting. They replied saying, "That was a trying time for our community. Since then, there have been numerous changes in the Sheriff's Office policy. In addition, the Sheriff's Office has implemented several programs for outreach, community engagement, and transparency that allows us to serve our community better."